So my name is Carlin Smith. I'm former president of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm currently now working for Consumers Energy. So appreciate you joining my session today. I can't imagine why you're here. The weather where you are is as beautiful as it is here in Petoskey. I would not be sitting in on a session on board development, but hopefully we'll make it light of it and have a good time, and hopefully it'll be some value for you. Joining me, I have kind of a surprise guest, and part of my presentation will be Jessica Stepker. Jessica is on the cusp, as she likes to say, at the low end of a millennial and the high end of a Gen Z. And she is going to be joining us. She is a unique position where she is a volunteer recruiter for Nana Food Project, but at the same time, she's a young person who likes to volunteer. And so I thought it'd be pretty valuable for you to hear a young person's perspective of what they're looking for in their volunteer experiences. So I just connected with Jessica. I'm thinking, where are you? And her Wi-Fi went down at her house. So she's making a beeline right now to the library so she can connect Wi-Fi and hopefully join us here soon. So welcome to Northern Michigan and our rural challenges that we have. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment here. And so I'll devote maybe the first 30 minutes of my presentation to kind of my organized, structured presentation. Jessica will come on and add some comments. And when she's finished, then we'll open it up for Q&A. I'm guessing most of your questions will be for Jessica, but we'll both be available. I am not able to see your chat during the presentation while I have my PowerPoint up, so I apologize for that. So go ahead and write your questions in the chat, and we'll catch up with them as we go along. So I'm just going to go blindly and hoping that you're able to see my screen, and because I can't see your chat, so you'll hear your comments. So hopefully we're all set. So I titled my presentation, Better Boards Bring Better Results, just because I thought that sounded good. But MFEA also billed it as Board Succession Planning and Attracting Youth. And I'm going to touch on all of that, plus kind of an emphasis on diversity within your boards. And so quickly, my background, why as a Consumers Energy utility guy talking about boards and nonprofits? Well, I have worked in the nonprofit world for most of my career. In fact, I was 17 years as president of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce. And prior to that, I was 5 years as president or executive director of the Harbor Springs Area Chamber of Commerce. On a side note, the Petoskey Chamber also had a festival. In fact, I started it in 2003, Petoskey's Festival on the Bay, and we closed the curtain on that event in 2019. And that was for financial reasons. That's a whole nother seminar. And if you guys want to get into it later, I'm happy to talk to you about our challenges with the festival, even though it ran for a long time and it was a great festival. But we had to close the curtain on that and say goodbye in 2019, so after 17 years. So I first heard the expression pale, male, and stale at an Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives conference in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was a group of young people from the Calgary, Alberta Chamber of Commerce. And they introduced us to the idea of what pale, male, and stale is. At the time, I remember chuckling, thinking, that's pretty funny. I like that, clever. And then until I realized, hey, wait a minute, I think they're talking about me. I'm an old white guy. And I'm not sure that was as flattering as I really wanted it to be. But there was a good point, and it was driven home during that session very well, that we need diversity on the board. If your board's looking like these people on the screen, you're probably in a bad situation. And I'm guessing none of you have that type of situation on the board. Some clip art I found that's obviously copyrighted, so I posted the link and the credits, but this is maybe a better board. Still not great because you're still not lacking a lot of youth on this board, but at least there are some women on the board, some people of color, and so there is a little bit more diversity. But I'd love to see some more younger folks in this picture, and that's what we're going to talk about and try to do for you today. So let's talk about just diversity in general on your boards of directors, because I feel that this is an important thing. And diversity to me comes in kind of two categories. One is the personal characteristics, and the other one is diversity in talents and skill sets. So first of all, in the personal characteristics, that top row across on my slide, Gender at the Petoskey Chamber when I was there, we were very careful to maintain as much gender balance as we could. We were very sensitive to this annually. I've been mortified if I would ever put a ballot out to our membership with all men or even all women on the ballot. I just don't think that would have ever been right. So we were very conscientious about it. We had a 15-person board at the Petoskey Chamber, and really most of the time kept some kind of 8-7 balance. Maybe sometime we'd slip to 9-6 or something like that, but not much less than that. Plus, a healthy percentage of our board chairs were women, which was great. Race for us in Northern Michigan is more of a challenge, but we do have a nice, healthy Native American population in our community. And most often, I'm not saying every year on our board, but most years on our board, we did have Native American representation on our board of directors. Age diversity is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, and attracting young people. But I would contend you don't want all young people on your board. I think you should have a balance, if you will, of age, so that there are some different life experiences on your board. For us, geography, this may or may not be an issue for you guys, but as a Chamber of Commerce that served a regional area, I liked having people on my board from Melanson and Pellston neighboring communities to Petoskey or Harbor Springs. Also, the downtown central business district was a geographic area that we wanted represented on our board. Socioeconomics, my next slide kind of talks a little bit about that, maybe some little backgrounds and different backgrounds in there. Sexual orientation, and then also a business mix. For a Chamber of Commerce, especially where we were, may not apply again to your organization, but a healthy business mix. We wanted a representative from manufacturing, from the building and trades, from retail, from hospitality, from healthcare. A nice mix on our board was very valuable to us. We paid very close attention to that. On the skill set side, you want a variety of skill sets and diversity of skill sets on your board as well. I always loved having a legal person on our board if we could. That was always very helpful. I'm not a strong finance guy, so having someone with some financial acumen on our board was extremely helpful and important to me. Maybe you need some marketing help. We all need fundraising help, so maybe you can have a fundraising expert on your board, a technology expert, or maybe someone from the human resources industry. So in preparing for this presentation today, I reached out to a lot of young people that I know and sent them an email with some survey questions, and I'm going to throughout my presentation today, provide some quotes from them. And the first quote is from Jessica, my co-presenter. And Jessica offered a great comment. In fact, her questions were so good, that's why I called her and said, would you mind co-presenting with me? Because I really liked the direction where she was going. But excuse me for reading my slides, but just so you can grab the quote, don't limit your scope to Susie Smith with 10 different degrees and credentials. Be open to that Subway manager, a single mom who's working to move up in the world. True diversity is not just looking at skin or listening for accents, it's embracing all walks of life. And so again, that's Jessica's thought on diversity on your board. The one challenge I might have to that, and it was something Joe Bauman talked about this morning in his presentation on boards, is the importance of having decision makers on your board, people who are in positions to make decisions in their organizations to be on your board. So they bring a lot of value. So why diversity on your board? Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's just kind of obvious to most of us, but I pulled this slide. A friend of mine from my Consumers Energy shared this with me for some training that she went through as I was, again, preparing for this. And it shows, the purple line, kind of a more homogeneous team. Maybe that's Dale, Male, and Pale team, whereas the gold line represents diverse teams. At the beginning, in the early stages of this transition to diversity, a homogeneous team will probably perform better than your diversity team. And just because that diversity team needs to find its place, there's a lot of different ideas, thought sets, backgrounds coming into play, and they kind of all need to learn their place. But once they do and move up that chart, they become much more diverse and, they become much more skilled, much more free thinking, that type of thing. The thought behind it is this. Homogeneous groups are kind of business as usual, prone to groupthink kind of things, whereas diverse boards have diversity of backgrounds, diversity of experiences, diversities of where they are in their lives, and because of that, they have diversity in thinking, and that takes your board further. So hopefully we're doing okay and grasping everything. All right, as we start to think about recruiting the next generations, I'm just offering this slide as a reminder for those out there who always have to refresh their memory like me on, well, what are the different generations again? What are their ages? By the way, these ages, as I was researching this, I find that there's not a lot of consistency to these ages. So this could vary by a year or two on either direction. But the baby boomers, that baby boom kind of ended in 1964. And so those people are ranging in age from 56 to 74 these days. The Gen Xers are now in their 40s and low 50s. Millennials are now in their mid 20s and approaching 40 years old. So some millennials, so that's a broad span. And the Gen Zs are just now really coming up and starting to make a difference into our workforces and hopefully our boards and committees down the road. So what do these different age groups seek? So if you're in that Gen X 40 to 55 age range, you're looking for an efficient use of time. Think about it. These are people with their families growing, their careers advancing, and kind of in the prime of their work lives and their family lives. So they need to have their time managed efficiently. They still value career building in this group. The Gen Xers are very much still focused on building their careers and strengthening their careers and being more successful in their careers. They do like to have some fun. And they do appreciate diversity in their groups. The millennials in that 25 to 40 range, it's really about the cause, not so much the structure or the organization, but the cause you're working toward. And that's where they're focused. They're very strong in technology. They're seeking balance in their life, and they're also seeking some meaning in their life. So you can really play to that as you recruit them onto your boards and committees. The Gen Zs, the Jessicas of the world, they live in technology. Technology is every day for them. They grew up with gaming consoles in their hand and phones in their hands and computers. If you're not doing everything by technology, they're just scratching their head and wondering what kind of dinosaur you are. So you're going to need to be really much into the technology world. They also seek out, not only do they appreciate diversity, they really seek out diversity. They love different backgrounds, different thoughts, different ways of life. They like learning about other people, and these folks are ready to change the world. My little sidebar thought on technology as a board, and again, this is a Chamber of Commerce board. In my later years, our board meetings, they got packets and information that they needed ahead of time via email. They did not get any kind of written kind of packets or anything like that other than maybe agenda at their place setting at the board meeting. Everything then was done on a video screen in front of them during the meeting. So the financials came up on a video screen, the minutes, whatever processes you had to go through were all up on a video screen during the meetings. And hopefully maybe some of you have started to move to that in your boards and committees. So here's another quote. This is from an X person describes himself as a Gen X. His name is Brian from here in Petoskey. And he just mentions that he likes volunteering because he's in a position to give back. And it's his words, I hope to teach my kids the value of volunteering and becoming part of something that is bigger than yourself. And that sometimes we just do things to do them, not because we were expecting something back in return. By the way, if you want to capture these quotes and remember them or use them again in the future, best probably just snap a photo of the screen. Some millennials also chimed in on the question of why volunteering. And Suzanne, who is an extremely high achiever in our organization, said that there's a lot of reasons to volunteer. A, she wants to change the world. She wants to cultivate new skills. She wants to grow herself personally and professionally and get better at what she does. She wants to see the organizations that she loves advance. She wants to share her knowledge with others, give some others some relief, which is a nice thought. Fill a gap that's needed to be gapped. She's looking for new to me challenges to figure out, things that are new out of the box that she doesn't get to do on a regular basis. And opportunities to look at old problems in a new light. And trust me, you want a Suzanne type on your board of directors. She's awesome. Hillary is awesome too. She's also a self-described millennial. And she talks about the value of people and connectivity, and that is still important. In my generation, that's why we joined boards a lot, was to meet new people, to network, get connected, help advance our careers. and she still wants to be connected. Hillary says that networking, camaraderie, and meeting new people will always be king. She says, I do want to change the world, but I just can't and don't want to do it alone. I want to interact with others who share that passion. I want to talk to them. I want to hear their stories and exchange ideas. She says it's human nature. We want to do things together. And then I'll quote Jessica once again as our token Gen Z here, borderline Gen Z. It's, I've always been an idealist seeking to be the change. I volunteer for many reasons, but my main motivators are she wants to make a difference. She wants to fulfill an obligation that she feels she has as a local caring citizen. And I think that's prominent in the Gen Z population. She wants that feeling of personal accomplishment. She wants to gain knowledge and add experience to her resume, and she wants to build community connections. So those are all valuable reasons why our younger people volunteer. And I think it's important to know that if we're going to recruit young people, you got to know what their hot buttons are and why they're interested in volunteering. So how do we find our young people? And you kind of got to be where they are. You put a newsletter bulletin out or an ad in some social media or anything. Hey, we need a volunteer to do this. We need someone to join our board. They're not going to pick up and respond to that and say, oh, I'm in. They need to be really asked directly. And to do that, you need to build relationships with them and network with them. Just like you're doing sales, you're selling a seat on your board of directors. So you need to go out and find people and talk to them about this opportunity and what's in it for them. Community leadership training programs are excellent. I know Michael was on the call. I think they have leadership Otsego County there. We have leadership Little Traverse here in Petoskey, leadership Grand Traverse and Traverse City. Many communities have community leadership training programs. Jessica's a graduate of leadership Little Traverse. That's a great feeding ground for prospective and future volunteers in your community. I would pay attention to that program and get engaged one way or another. Some communities also have young professionals groups. Again, connecting with those, Jessica's involved with the YP group in Petoskey. Maybe your organization could actually sponsor a social night or something for a YP group. And then get maybe a chance to speak and talk about opportunities to volunteer within your organization. And again, network and make connections with young people. And then we always talk about building our farm systems. Baseball has A ball, double A ball, triple A ball before you get up to the major leagues. What are your A level, double A level kind of opportunities for volunteers? I would look and find your key volunteers, people who are excelling maybe at wow, this person has done a great job in our children's area for so long, or this person's been a great job helping with finances, and see if we can elevate and grow those people into our boards. So how do we recruit them? Well, as I said earlier, ask. They just need to be asked, and they want to be asked. The quote at the bottom is from my friend Bill, who's in our Rotary Club with me, who is a self-identified millennial. And he just says, don't be afraid to ask. Often I find myself finding out about volunteer opportunities without enough notice or when the opportunity is already passed. And, he might want to be involved, but let him know about them. Ask him. Also speak to their talents. Tell them why they're needed. Stroke their egos a little bit. Let them know that, hey, I need somebody with your kind of skill sets on our board. You'll make a big difference for us. You'll hear again later, but be clear and specific about the roles and responsibilities and time commitments that are going to be involved. Just be honest and upfront about them. It's better for them to say, nah, it's not going to fit my lifestyle right at the moment, than to have somebody fail and, go through that uncomfortable feeling of, geez, I didn't know it was going to be this much work or whatever. And then what's the ROI, return on investment? What's in it for them? And you need to sell that story. So once we get them, then how do we keep them? So I asked my survey folks, what frustrates you as a volunteer? And David, who is a self-described Gen Xer, said, organizations with small visions or that are disorganized. They both seem to have communication problems, which is a turnoff. Organizations with small visions tend to be most happy with the status quo, and the status quo is typically a one-way ticket to becoming irrelevant. That's kind of strong, harsh words from David, but a good point. If you're not being relevant, if you're not moving forward, that's critical to him. And communications and just jot down that word communications right now. It's going to come up again. That's a key ingredient to engaging your board members. Jen, who's also a Gen X, says people who do not appreciate time given by others. So I was glad a Gen X said this. The millennials are a little, have been accused, I guess, of, needing that recognition, those pats on the backs and the ribbons and all that. It's kind of a joke in the world. But really, we all need that. We really all need that little feeling of appreciation, that gesture to say, hey, thanks so much for doing what you did. You really made a difference. My millennials who answered the question, what frustrates you as a volunteer? You see that communications word comes up again from Megan. Lack of communications and or directions. She says, if I'm giving up time, money, make it easy, straightforward as possible for me to help. So again, you can't communicate with them enough. And then Suzanne, the high achiever that I was talking about earlier, just said, when there's not progress, that's her turnoff. I don't want to meet for the sake of meeting. I need to be on boards and committees that are willing to set goals, make progress to meet them, not just check a box or pat ourselves on the back. So again, being sensitive with their time, utilizing their skill sets, and moving forward so that she knows her work there is making a difference. So I'll pause there to catch my breath. I'm going to take a quick drink and then then move into succession planning. Just have a couple of slides about succession planning, and really what that's all about is how you plan for those vacancies on your board and make sure your board retains that diversity and continues to grow in a fresh way with new ideas and new people. Joe Ballman talked a lot about this morning in his board development session, and I don't mean to be redundant with him, but I'm not sure that many of you were on his call. But I really believe strongly, and Joe did too, in the value of a good nominating committee with a strong executive influence. In other words, the staff leaders of the organization having some kind of influence on helping that nominating committee to get to good decisions on who to put on your board. So I'm going to I apologize, but my world and experiences are in the Chamber of Commerce world, but here was our process and how we worked on it. And I want to say that I took this process very, very seriously. The nominating committee process was important to me, and I took a lot of time and effort and energy to make it go smoothly. So it was a priority for me. So first thing for our chamber board, and again, please excuse the example, but hopefully you can connect it to your organization in some way. But we had 15 members on our board. Every year, 5 people's terms expired, and so everybody had a 3-year term. So we determined right up front whose terms are up. We had a term limits of 2 terms, so they could renew for another 3 years if they chose to, or if we wanted them to. Sometimes we did not always want that. That was awkward, but we worked through it. But then we determined, all right, how many actual vacancies are we going to have? And then we also, by bylaws, we had to seek official nominations from our membership, and we did do that through a query. We usually always got some nominees, sometimes a lot, sometimes a few, but we did have nominees. I want to stress here, for us, a nominee didn't automatically mean you were going onto the board. It just meant you went to the nominating committee for vetting, and every official nominee was given full consideration on our board. So once we determined who our terms are up, we had our nominees in place, then we looked at what's going to be the gender mix of our board as it stands. What categories are missing? Did we lose an accountant? Did we lose a marketing person? Did we lose somebody from Pelston? Did we lose a woman? Did we lose whatever, that kind of thing? Did we lose manufacturing, or did we lose, I had those backwards. Categories would have been more manufacturing, agriculture, or healthcare, or those types of things. Skill sets would have been marketing, legal, accounting, those types of things. What holes do we need to fill on our board? And then we started putting names together. I always brought some names and suggestions from past year nominees, from past year considerations, from people who have been shining on our ambassadors committee, maybe people who have been strong on our government relations committee, or people who have just been more engaged with the chamber lately that I thought were impressive. And I brought all those names, and then our nominating committee worked through the vetting process, and the process worked extremely well. It was very structured, organized, and thoughtful, and the process worked very, very well. I think that's why we had a lot of success at the Petoskey Chambers, because we recruited top-notch board members into our organization. Have a note down there, term limits, love them or hate them. I actually knew an executive that really hated him. He ran a land trust up here in northern Michigan, and he loved the continuity of boards and the sustainability of boards. I was originally in his school of thought until we instituted term limits. I love term limits, highly recommend them. It just automatically churns your board and moves people out, and it's really good. Keep people from getting stale. We also had a very structured process for succession planning for officers. And the officer was our executive committee team, and they consisted of our chair, past chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. And when you joined the executive committee team, if you joined as secretary, you joined with the understanding that the following year you were going to be vice chair, and 2 years down the road you were going to be chair, and after that you were going to be past chair. So you were making a long-term commitment. This is where our stability and consistency came in on our board. And you were making a long-term commitment to being on the executive committee and a leadership part of our team. This worked extremely well, except for those times. Last year I was going to be at the chamber. The vice chair of the board took a job in Seattle and left. And so we had to do some juggling but we figured those things out as times came up. Most of the time our system worked, secretary, vice chair, chair, and then serving as past chair, and it worked very well. Notice something absent from this list is our treasurer. I always kept our treasurer on the side. They were not up on this hierarchy thing. Our treasurer often worked 2 to 3 year terms instead of the traditional 1 year term. And the reason for that is because we required a lot of expertise and hands-on work from our treasurer. And so we kept them out, and they were kind of handled separately, but still part of the officer team. So that's what I have on succession planning. I'll leave you with just some parting thoughts, and then hopefully Jessica has joined us by now and can chat as well. So, but hang on just a moment. So I thought I'd share you with these parting thoughts from our people I surveyed, and I asked them, what advice do you have for executives of organizations about their board members and their volunteers? And David, again, who talked earlier about communication, said communicate so much that it feels like you're going overboard. If your volunteers feel that you're communicating too much, they will let you know. But if you aren't communicating enough, they are most likely going to assume that you do not need them, and then your organization will just fade into their backgrounds of their lives, and they're not going to be thinking about your organization as much. So communicate with your board as much as you can. Jen talked about seeking out differing opinions, backgrounds, and experiences, just reinforcing what I talked about by diversity. She says the person whose name is on the marquee is not the only one best suited for everything. And again, that resembles Jessica's quote from earlier. Some millennials chimed in on this one. Megan says, recognize that people will always claim they are too busy, and they are busy. So anything you can do to help them turn it into something more than just volunteering and show them that it's super well organized and flexible will help. Suzanne says, make your expectations and time commitments clear. We talked about the importance of this, and I think she says it well. It's not fun for me to let others down, and if the time commitment wasn't accurate up front, that puts everyone in a bad position. So be honest and upfront about what the board involvement is going to be. And then Hillary says, create a positive, empowering atmosphere. Make folks feel appreciated, heard, and like they're a member of your team or family. Never stop reminding yourself or the volunteers on the why. Keep that why in front of them. And then Gabe is also kind of a cusper, that very into millennial and early Gen Z, says, as much as it hurts to say it, I think younger people are turned off by long-term commitments. So be mindful of that. So when creating a volunteer opportunity, try to include options that have some flexibility. And then I offered a parting shot just because I wanted to. When it comes to board management, bring your A game. Bring some energy, bring some technology, bring some fun, bring some meaningful work for them to do. make every board member feel glad they came to the meeting. Like, oh, geez, I'm so glad I was there. I learned this or that, or I got to participate in this, or I got to hear this person speak, whatever it is. And I'll tell you, I learned this from experience. I was guilty for being in that groupthink, same old routine kind of board meeting kind of stuff. And it wasn't until later in my career that somebody pulled me aside and they needed more engagement as a board member. So how can we do that? I'm a firm believer in energy. Bring as much energy as you can and fun and humor to your board meetings. Use technology to your advantage and also give them something juicy to dive into at a board meeting. Just not a bunch of reports. Give them something to have a good discussion about where they feel like their thoughts are really, really needed. And so those are, I used to have an administrative assistant work for me when I was at the Harbor Springs Chamber. And I remember her coming into work one day saying, oh, it's board meeting day. You're going to be all bunchy today, aren't you? And I was. I put a lot of pressure on myself on board meetings. They were shirt and tie days. They were, like I said, bringing my A game. And so that was kind of funny that she said that. So let me introduce Jessica, and then I'm going to take my slide down, or my PowerPoint down so that I can see and catch up and make sure you guys are still there. I don't have any feedback from you. So, but Jessica Stepker hopefully has joined us now. Her day job is with Mana Food Project. She's a community engagement and volunteer coordinator, which you can see is relevant for our conversation today. She's also co-chair of a Thriving Petoskey Committee, which is a neat initiative in the Petoskey Chamber is leading. And she's also on the executive team of Thrive 45, our young professionals group in the Petoskey area. And here's take a quick picture if you need of our email addresses should you want to follow up later and contact. And I'm going to now take that down as soon as I figure out how to do that. Stop sharing, it says. So is anybody still there? Hey, I see people. And Jessica, you've joined us. Are you able to, let's see, how do I get you to?
Oh, there I am. Can everybody hear me?
How about that?
Yeah. Sorry, I am. It's 20 when
you were able to hear everything and all that. And so.
Yes.
And you found your way to the library?
I did. I am in the library. My Wi-Fi decided to go out the day that I'm working from home. So that's 2020 for you. But I was able to reserve a room in the library. So we're all good. Speaking of public services like that, expect your millennials and Gen Z to depend on those. A lot of us are answering emails while we're walking home and using our phones way more often because it's quicker and it's faster. So that just got me on a tangent. But anyway, I'm so very glad that Carlin invited me to this. It was totally unexpected. I was just answering his email and felt very flattered to be invited. Carlin, if nobody knows, is his own person in itself. He's like a huge community champion in this area. And that's coming from someone who I moved up here about 2.5 years ago. And it was immediate that he was this big personality, this very high in charisma and community connections and really just caring for everybody. I don't know a single person that doesn't like Carlin. So I think you should really listen to what he had to say. I agree with almost everything. So
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis. And then I'll open it up to questions. I actually perform better when people ask me questions, so it's fine. I work full-time at a food bank, a nonprofit in northern Michigan called Mana Food Project. And so I've kind of spent the majority of my life working in nonprofits or public services. I worked in a hospital, I worked in a health department. Now I'm working for a larger regional nonprofit. And I actually manage, I like to say over 500 volunteers. In 2019, we had over 800 individuals come and volunteer with us. But some of those are, once a year type of people, like let me have my workplace bring in all of our employees and we'll volunteer for a day. But a lot of those are regular volunteers that actually come in once or twice a week. So I'm in regular contact, especially now with our volunteers during COVID-19. I actually just had to send my second email out system-wide to cancel a bunch of volunteer shifts because we had a possible employee exposure. And so those are the types of things that you have to craft your message very carefully, accurately, and also very timely. So I am all about communications. That's what my bachelor's degree is in, health communications from Grand Valley. And I also volunteered a lot on campus while I was there too. So that's my day job. Volunteers, communications, working with the health department and lots of other community organizations to make the food we distribute healthier, connect clients to resources. I work with Carlin even still, now that he moved to Consumers Energy. He provides us with opportunities for grants. So just lots of things like that. And so many other hats, especially now during COVID. Actually, next week I'll have to go in and pack some food boxes and distribute them to clients outside. So that'll be fun. And that's my day job. And normally when I come home, sometimes in between other tasks at work, I am part of the executive team of Thrive 45 Young Professionals. And we call ourselves Thrive 45 because we're kind of embedded underneath the Chamber of Commerce. And we're also attracting and engaging young professionals above the 45th parallel. So that's the 45. It's really an undefined region, and we really like to pull in anyone who wants to get involved. So right now, we're actually going through our own board member procurement process and committee member procurement process. We're relooking at our bylaws, relooking at our entire calendar. We had to cancel so many events because of 2020. So as we're basically redefining ourselves, I was kind of in a new position on the executive team. We had just restructured to go from a president, vice president, and treasurer to now. I think there's three of us on the executive team, and we have very flexible roles. And instead of one of us shouldering all the work, we rotate, and some of us will lead the meeting sometimes. One of us will take notes. It's really a team effort, and I really like that approach because it definitely decreases burnout. That was a problem last year, even before COVID happened. So that's a really fun group. I get to meet a lot of people. I'm actually one of the younger people on the board. Being 24, I'm actually moving a lot of things forward, even though the folks that I'm also in the same room with have many more years of experience than I do. It just depends on what time that you have available and really how much passion you bring. So that also helps in some of the other things I do. Like Carlin said, I'm co-chair of the Thriving Petoskey Committee, which basically we're looking at all of our chamber members. So we have about 800, I think a little over 800, which is really great for this region. We're an astounding chamber in this state. And we're trying to make the businesses aware and conscious of their practices. So really involving more the triple bottom line aspect of people, planet, and profit. And really having a balance, making our communities stronger from the inside out, and to really increase resilience that way. And so that's a very generic description of what we're doing. Day to day involves checking in with businesses, and we're sort of formulating a type of measuring process, kind of like a B corporation, but very, very much small scale. So that I have really no background in at all. I am not a business person. Like I said, I am used to nonprofits and working behind the scenes, working long hours for not very much pay. And I think that's why I'm used to being a volunteer, because it, in my mind, is just something that I feel obligated to do and that I want to do. So those, I would say, are my big three things that I'm doing. Also, in my free time, I'm leading a current effort in our county, Emmett County, to try to get public transit up and rolling. It's been a giant conversation for years and years and years. And a lot of the times we just need people on the ground to go to county commissioner meetings or city council meetings and really advocate for certain things that we want in our community. And you'd be surprised how many people want to do that and are willing to do that. They just don't know. They've never been to one of those meetings. That was me when I first moved up here. It was very scary when I first went. But now that I've got my feet on the ground and I know people like Carlin, I know people like Nikki, the now president of the chamber, going through Leadership Little Traverse was a huge, if anything, a huge networking opportunity for me. It was so much more than that, but you just connect with so many different people and you get to learn really quickly what they're passionate about and what you can help with in the community. So that's just a little bit about me. As I said, I perform better if someone asks me a question, so I want to open it up to anyone. Do we normally answer questions in the chat? Or let's see.
We do, but let me start and maybe get the ball rolling then. People, please, I'll watch the chats and Jessica can kind of comment. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them as well. But now that you've gotten involved at a pretty heavy level volunteering as a 24-year-old person with some heavy issues, transportation, public transportation in our county, Thriving Petoskey, which is a conscious capitalism effort, promotion that's community-wide, and then also, the Young Professionals Group. These are kind of big things. What have been your challenges volunteering and your rewards volunteering as a young person?
Yeah, well, I'd say I think a lot of people like me struggle with sometimes biting off more than you can chew. I had always done that. Even in college, I would try to do all these little projects on the side. And when it gets down to the wire, you feel really stressed out, but it just gives you more motivation to pull through. So, and especially during this year, everyone's burnt out all the time. There's so much to do. And I think luckily people are being more understanding of just being a little bit more flexible. So that's not necessarily my biggest challenge. I know a lot of other people in my life are having that challenge to overcome. A lot of our board members had to take time off. They had a child or they just had a complete life upheaval and they asked if we could re-engage them in January. We totally were like, yeah, we get it. There's more important things to life than this, especially when you're not getting paid for this. So we try to make everything we do as like a family mindset. I think that's a very notable challenge that, and I wish I could keep doing all of this full time, like all the time. And it's difficult when I have to balance my passions and community volunteering with actually, being able to pay my bills and being able to pay for rent in a downtown Petoskey.
Those pesky jobs and things that you just
I know.
volunteering. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love my job, but it really does. If I had a choice, I would choose to do a conglomeration of all these volunteer activities and get paid for it. That would be my dream. So I think you'll find that in a lot of folks' lives. A lot of times I'll ask someone to do something or ask if they'd like to get involved. And they're like, I'm sorry, I just have way too much going on. Like I can't, it's really hard to, have a relationship with someone or, try to buy a house or try to adopt a kid or all of these things and be a full-time activist. So totally get that.
If I can interrupt you there, I think that's just a great point that the audience needs to hear when you're recruiting young people. Think about where they are and the place that they are in their lives. I think of a mutual friend of ours, Krista, who just had a baby a week ago. I think she's been a model volunteer and a great leader of the Thrive 45 Young Professionals Group. But she had a baby. Life happened, and that's where she wants to spend her time and needs to spend her time right now. So she's not really available as a volunteer. And we need to be sensitive to where these people are in their lives and they're all seeking a balance, and we need to help honor that balance.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of people are in different spots. I think one reason why I think it was mentioned under Gen Z is that we're not necessarily looking for a lot of commitment. That is one reason why. Another reason why is that we were brought up in this very troubling world, and we have a lot of doubts of what the future holds. So it's really hard for us to say, yeah, I'll volunteer to co-chair this thing if I don't have a secure job, if I need to keep my options open for jobs that call me out of state. What if I have to go back home and help my mom? What if I have to do this and this and this? And what if, what if the economy crashes? And then like there are so many things that can happen in a short amount of time. And Gen Zs and millennials are really attuned to world problems in general. It can be very depressing when you look at the news. I think all of us are kind of feeling that way. And we really internalize that and have a lot of doubts about the future. So as long as you are, flexible and adaptable to what they need and what they can do, you can gradually reel them in and have them feel comfortable on your board at the same time.
So Michael asked a question in the chat about he's on the Alpenfest board in Gaylord, and they have an opening on their board, and high school students are expressing an interest on possibly serving on their board. Could this work? I think probably, this is my answer, but curious to yours, but I think a high school person could bring some good, interesting perspective on how to make teens engaged with the festival and be involved in that type of thing. They may be limited in the types of things they can volunteer for, or actually hands-on kind of things to do. But I think it could be an interesting resource. I'm not scared off by that idea. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, well, that's actually really interesting. I think that's becoming more of a norm. When I moved here, I noticed that I believe both the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation and the Charlevoix Area Community Foundation have youth advisory boards. And that's specifically different than their board of directors, but it's actually where myself as applying for a grant, I've presented in front of this youth advisory board. And they
It's intimidating, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really fun because I could both, well, I don't know if it's my age, but I could both relate to them and make analogies that they can, really relate to. And also they ask very good questions for being students and if they're that engaged in the community and if they're that curious, we need to keep them that curious. So 100%, if you think it's comfortable for having, reserving one spot for a high schooler, or even one or two or three, depending how large you want to get it. Okay, at Seco Community Foundation. I think it's a great place to start. You can completely change your direction that way, in a good way.
Any other questions from the group? Please keep them coming. So that's great. I don't know if you covered the rewards. What kind of rewards do you find from volunteering? What's making Jessica whole?
Yeah. So one thing that I found that is really surprising is the more people you meet, the more either the random things or the random things you're able to participate in, or like, oh, I have this event this day, you should just come and hang out, or you should come speak, or like getting to know Carlin. Suddenly I'm here speaking to all of you. So this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't, made the connection and stuck to it. And I really do think it's just a snowballing effect of involvement. And a lot of times, once you get your foot in the door in a lot of places, and as long as you're consistent with, what you're going to do, what you say you did, you're going to keep having doors open for you. So I've been very blessed in that realm. A lot of times it feels like I'm not even trying. And that's a small community. So there's several like-minded folks around here like me doing that. Making friends is also a really, really good reward, especially for...
Yeah, because you were a stranger coming up here, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I moved up here with no family and no friends. very much for the first couple months, I was going to work and coming home and going to bed and getting involved in Leadership Little Traverse, and then Thrive 45 really solidified relationships for me. And now myself and the 2 other members of the executive team, we greet each other as friends, like, hi friends, and we hang out outside of meetings, not right now. And same with folks that I met in Leadership Little Traverse. The professional relationships also double as, friends and mentees and mentors. It's really quite cool.
That warms my heart.
Yeah, it was a great decision to move up here. So,
yeah, good. That makes me happy. We're glad to have you. So, it kind of reminds me I do an annual thing. Didn't get to do it this year, unfortunately, but eighth grade career day at Petoskey Middle School. I'm always, last few years, have been the keynote speaker for that, and I developed a program. I call it Rise, but it's about not ever knowing when you're in a job interview, and the concept is this: people are watching you, whether you know it or not. And if you want to grow and advance yourself, you need to be out there where people can see you, which is what you're doing. You're being visible now in the community and that type of thing. And then they need to see you doing good things. And so you never making an impression on somebody that could lead to an opening of a career opportunity down the road. And you're not going to make those impressions coming home at night playing video games in your home and going to bed, But if you're out engaged in chamber activities, young professional activities, or community events and programs, people are going to see you and people are going to notice you. And someday a phone call is going to come and say, hey, Jessica, what do you think about coming to work for us? The job interview's already happened because we've already observed you and know who you are and what you're doing, in the community. So that's just a message that I give to young people quite often. And I think it really applies to young people volunteering. It gets them out of the door and into the community, and where they can hopefully grow and make the right connections and network and advance their careers.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even I have a lot of high school students, like National Honor Society students, that come and volunteer at Manna Food Project, or early college entrants, or even middle school students, and they'll come and have a great time and spend time with us. And sometimes, whether they ask it or not, I have a backup letter of recommendation ready, because I have been engaging with them, and I kind of know at that point in their life they're going to need something. Even just a good letter of rec can go a long way. So,
yeah. So, all right. Do you have anything else you'd like to add or discuss?
Oh, let me look at my notes. I wrote down what I told you the other day.
I think we're near the end. If anybody has any additional questions, we're getting close to last call on those, so chime in real quickly. I threw our email addresses, I hope you don't mind, but threw our email addresses into the chat if anybody wants to follow up with sending us an email. We can schedule phone conversations later if you'd like as well.
Sure. Yep. I'm totally open to that. I guess the only other thing that I would add is, two things. One, really hone in on the diversity standpoint. That's what I and so many people younger than me are looking specifically at boards and leadership positions to see how much you actually value diversity. If your board doesn't reflect that, then you're going to have a hard time convincing me. Also, secondly, probably just having your volunteers, whether that's board members or other positions, really involved in the decision-making process. It helps them feel really a part of things. It helps them really take ownership of certain initiatives and really get them engaged. So, not to mention getting good ideas from them, right? But really have everyone at the table and involved. And even the kids, even the high schoolers, you'd be surprised. So that's all for me.
And that's a good point. You sometimes need to even pull that out of them, ask them directly, hey, Jessica, you've been quiet in this meeting. Did you have any thoughts on it? So to help bring them into the engagement a little bit better. So that's a good point. Well, I hope we've helped you guys today and have given you some thoughts on how to engage young people and get them involved in your boards, how to plan your board succession and build it. And I'm a firm believer in the strength and power of a good board. As Jessica said, our Petoskey Chamber is an overachieving chamber. It's a small town of 6,000, but it's a chamber of 800 members. And we were named Outstanding Chamber multiple times. And it was just an overachieving organization. And that happened because of good boards and getting the right people there to push and push and push and keep that organization moving forward. So they pushed me a ton, made me better at my job. And I think if we can get young people into the mix, it makes it all the better. So hopefully we've helped, and hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Jessica, thank you so much for being a part of this. You were fabulous, just everything I expected. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks. And of course, I hope everyone gets a round of applause to Carlin. So even though we can't hear you or see you, I trust that you're doing that.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll send you on your way and get out and enjoy this nice weather for the weekend. So thanks again.
Take care.